Months passed. The base settled into its rhythm again. New squads, new dogs. Blue was now a fully trained military canine. He obeyed every command. But in truth, he followed only one thing: Shadow's eyes. Shadow had grown older. His breathing had become heavier. Nights were restless. Old wounds ached. Ghosts of the past came back. One night, the coldest of autumn nights. No stars above. Silence everywhere. Shadow slowly rose, left his warm corner. The other dogs slept soundly. He didn't look at anyone. He just walked outside, heading toward the hill behind the base, toward the edge of the old forest. Blue followed, but Shadow stopped, turned, looked straight into the young dog's eyes, then lowered his head slightly and stepped back. It was farewell. Blue understood. Shadow climbed the hill. Dawn had not yet broken. The horizon was painted gray. Fine snowflakes drifted down. He sat and looked at the sky. Memories came flooding back. The first mission, the first life saved, the first wound, Heart's voice, a child's laughter on the base, the last battle. Blue. All of it merged into one silent moment. From afar, the faint chime of a bell rang, the base's morning call. But this time, Shadow did not rise. His eyes closed. Slowly, peacefully, forever. Dawn crept in. The base stirred awake. But the trainer noticed first Shadow was gone. They all rushed outside, running uphill. Blue reached the top first. There lay Shadow, still, but calm. Heart arrived. He knelt, laid a hand on Shadow's head. Farewell, soldier. You gave us everything. And then Blue lifted his head to the sky and let out a long, mournful howl. The entire base stood in silence. Above them, the sun broke the horizon. They buried Shadow with full military honors. Medals, the flag, the final salute. But the greatest tribute lived on in the lives he had saved. In the heart of the base, they raised a monument, a statue of a dog, eyes fixed on the horizon. Beside him, a younger dog, his Shadow. At the base, engraved in stone, he never spoke, but he fought for us all. He was Shadow. Which city are you reading this story from? Drop it in the comments. Have you ever served in the army? Or maybe you had a loyal dog like this. Share your story with us. Every comment matters. If the story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Brave Paws Stories. This isn't just a story. This is life. This is the unbreakable bond between a dog and a human. Subscribe, share, right? We're waiting to hear your story. Asterisk asterisk. ChatGPT. Autumn. The forest near the base had turned gold. The air smelled of dry grass. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Shadow walked slowly to the old clearing by the perimeter. This was where he had first caught a scent. This was where he had first felt the razor edge between life and death. No one was around. Rusted fences. Old wire. Only the wind. Sometimes, if you listened hard, you could almost hear gunfire in the distance. But that was just memory's echo. Shadow sat facing the sun. The light hurt his eyes. Brightness felt foreign now. Then, from behind, light footsteps. A young dog with bright, eager eyes. His name was Blue. Gray coat. Still learning. Still clumsy. Still blind to the scent of war. Shadow turned his head. For a moment, he just stared. The young dog froze. He understood at once this was no ordinary dog. Blue barked, high and sharp, but Shadow stayed silent, slowly turned his gaze away. By evening, Blue came back. This time he didn't run. He just sat next to Shadow. Quiet. Minutes passed without a sound. Then, from the forest, something faint. A sound too soft for humans to notice, but not for Shadow. His head lifted. Ears forward. This wasn't the wind. A trainer came running, shouting, "Movement on the west side. Get all dogs back inside." Shadow stood, didn't look at anyone, just started walking toward the sound. Not slow, not fast, controlled, certain. Blue bolted after him. "Stop him. He's retired," the trainer yelled. But no one could stop him. That night, everything changed again. On the west side, an unknown group was trying to breach the perimeter. Before any alarm sounded, before anyone knew, they had been there. But Shadow had already sensed them. He moved ahead, stopped behind a bush, lowered his head, listened. Blue was at his side, trembling, catching the scent of war for the first time. Shadow didn't give orders. He just moved forward. Blue hesitated, frozen. Fear held him in place. Then Shadow turned his head, eyes locking on him. That look said everything. In that instant, everything changed. Shadow lunged, hit a man hard, driving him to the ground. Another figure rose from the dark. Blue charged, teeth bared, heart pounding with something new. His first fight, his first blood. The alarm blared, but only 20 seconds later. Those 20 seconds saved the base. By dawn, Hart arrived, officers at his side. Shadow sat on the ground, breathing hard. Beside him, Blue, bleeding but alive. Behind them, 2 captured intruders, hands bound. Hart approached, said nothing at first. Then, slowly, he took the old medal from his shoulder and laid it in front of Shadow. "This isn't just yours anymore. It belongs to both of you. 2 heroes." Blue pressed his head against Shadow. The old dog shifted, raised his head. His tail moved just once. Silent. The sun climbed over the horizon. A new hero had been born. ChatGPT. Shadow lay in the far corner of the base, stretched out on the ground, gazing at the sun. No one was around. The scars of past battles were gone now. Only grass, dust, and sky remained. Some soldiers gathered for morning drills. But no one gave Shadow orders anymore. No one sent him anywhere. He was honored. He was a living legend. Sergeant Hart no longer came every day. Shadow understood. When the war ends, people slowly return to their lives. But a dog never does. A dog remembers everything. At night, he often dreamed. Explosions, blood, fire. Sometimes he heard voices in his sleep, the soldiers calling his name. But every morning was still quiet. One morning, unidentified drones appeared above the base. Communications went down for a short time. Security was immediately tightened. The soldiers were on edge. No one knew what was happening. Shadow stayed in the yard. But then, he lifted his head and stared at the sky for a long time. His ears twitched. He sensed something. Slowly, he stood. Stiff legs carried him toward the perimeter. Hart saw him from a distance. A strange feeling gripped his chest. He turned to the young soldier beside him. If he leaves his spot, that means something's about to happen. Shadow reached the checkpoint. He hadn't set paw here since that day. The day bullets rained down. But today was different. Then, around 3 a.m., an explosion ripped through the edge of the base. Shouts. The alarm blared. Soldiers grabbed their weapons and ran. And in that moment, Shadow crossed the perimeter, running toward the blast. He didn't look back. No one called him. No one ordered him. But he didn't stop. Minutes later, a second explosion struck. But this time, Shadow was already there. He crashed into a crate holding a small drone, triggering the blast earlier than planned. Because of that, the main part of the base remained intact. 2 young soldiers nearby survived, wounded but alive. Shadow lay still. Hart ran to him, lifted his head in his hands. Blood ran down his face as he stroked him. "No, no, you saved us again." Shadow opened his eyes, silent as always, but his eyes spoke. Slowly he moved his head. Hart whispered, "You're still here. We're all alive. Because of you." Again. Shadow looked at the sky, then closed his eyes. Silence. Rain began to fall. The sky wept. The earth remained still. The next day, a solemn ceremony was held at the base. The entire unit gathered, flags in hand, a medal for Shadow. Sergeant Hart spoke, voice barely steady. He never spoke a word, but he saved us not once but twice. He is our silent hero. He is Shadow. Shadow lived that day, but the scars of war would never fade. A new inscription appeared at the base. On those days, men survived, but in the end, only the dog moved. ChatGPT. The sun was rising slowly. The base was quiet. Only the sound of nurses' footsteps and the occasional crackle of a radio broke the silence. Shadow lay on the bed. His body was healing, but his eyes remained the same, deep, as if staring into that night far away. Some soldiers would stop by, run a hand over his head. One left a piece of chocolate, but he didn't move. He only breathed. Sergeant Hart came every day. He would sit in silence. Sometimes he said nothing at all, just sat beside him. Other times, only this. "I owe you." No reply. Shadow just breathed. One evening, Hart came with a rucksack over his shoulder. In his hand, a leash unfastened. He had 2 days' leave. He stood looking at Shadow. "Come on, let's get away from the war for a while." Shadow lifted his head slightly. His ears didn't move, but his eyes understood. Slowly he stood. They walked in silence, just the 2 of them. Not far from the city, they reached a small hill. The wind was blowing. The sun was dipping into the horizon. The air smelled of grass. Shadow sat looking at the sky. Hart sat beside him. "The war took everything from you. No childhood, no peace, but you gave life to all of us." Shadow turned to him, tail moving slowly. "You never spoke, but you told the greatest story." The sun was setting. They sat in silence. The sky wasn't blue anymore. It was between red and black, like the smoke of an explosion, but pure. This was the color of peace. The next day, Shadow returned to the base. But they no longer took him to drills. He spent his time in a quiet corner of the yard, calm, safe. One day, a new recruit arrived. Young, tall, still green. He saw Shadow and asked, "Who's that dog?" Hart replied, "He's the Shadow of war. He's a silent hero. He's Shadow." The recruit shrugged and walked away, but Shadow watched him go. No anger, no resentment, just a tired calm. Later that evening, Hart came again. In his hand, an old medal. He placed it around Shadow's neck. "This isn't mine, it's ours. But it wouldn't exist without you." Shadow lowered his head, said nothing. But then, the wind picked up. Leaves rustled. The sky cleared, and the moon appeared. It wasn't an answer. It was silence. And sometimes, the strongest answer is exactly that. ChatGPT. Dark night. Silence. Only the whistling wind and distant gunfire. Afghanistan. 2022. Communication lost. The unit was presumed dead. But one dog changed everything. In a mountain gorge, 8 soldiers lay low. Dust, blood, sweat. The smell of war hung heavy in the air. The radio was silent. The sky was gray. Rain was near. Sergeant Jason Hart sat leaning against a rock. His face was dirty, eyes hollow. Beside him, a black German shepherd. Its name Shadow. No one is coming for us. The radio has been dead for 14 hours. In this war, silence is the same as death. Shadow stared ahead, silent. His tail didn't move. Only his eyes were alive. He senses something. That's why he's so still. One of the soldiers whispered, his voice tired, barely audible. Hart didn't answer. He just kept looking at Shadow. This dog has been with me through 3 countries, 5 assaults, dozens of nights. But today his eyes are different. Today he's too quiet. Hart pulled a flash drive from his pocket. A lanyard, a note, coordinates. All hope tied into one bundle. He fastened it around Shadow's neck. The dog stayed silent, looked at him as if he understood. This is your last mission. If you make it, they'll live. Shadow looked back once, then ran. No one followed. He didn't carry an order. He carried hope. He was no longer a soldier. He was a silent prayer. Night, mountains, darkness. He limped, but he didn't stop. Past craters, along mine trails, lungs burning with every breath. He walked a path no man could walk, because 8 lives depended on him. He paused a few times to breathe, but never turned back. Through the night, the only living soul moving forward was Shadow. He collapsed at the gate. Wounded, alive. The flash drive was removed. Voices rose. Rushed footsteps. This is the dog from that unit. Coordinates are here. They're alive. Launch the rescue mission. Dawn broke. The rescue team found the unit. The soldiers were alive. Injured, but breathing. Shadow didn't come back. He didn't return. Where is he? Didn't you see him? Silence. Days passed. The base hospital. White sheets. Under them Shadow, barely opening his eyes. Hart entered the room. Stood for a few seconds without a word, then quietly sat next to him. Shadow's ear twitched. His tail moved slightly. We're alive. Because of you. But you stayed in that day. 8 men lived that day. But in the end, only